What's shaking, everybody? Welcome to a Monday. It's an Overreaction Monday show. Anwar, all these years, and I still want to call it the Monday Overreaction Show. And it's the Overreaction Monday Show. Hey, it's a Monday. We're starting out kind of like you would expect. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. He's Alex Dunlap there at the bottom of the screen. Do us a solid. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. Get notifications. All of those. Bang, bang, bang. All in a row. And then you don't have to worry about it too much the rest of the show. Just indulge us that we're going to give you a show over the course of the next hour that's worthy of your pushing the thumbs up button.
It feels like a pre-tip, Catch, right? It feels a little like a pre-tip. I had to do that last night buying sushi for the wife for Mother's Day. You know, you got to order it beforehand and you got to tip them beforehand. I'm like, well, should I really tip for a job that I'm not sure they do good yet? Or if I don't tip, are they going to do it bad on purpose? But we're
going to earn it. I'm telling you, you can always take it back. That's the difference between the like and the tip. You can always take the like back if after the show's over, you're like, those guys suck today. I will not give them. I'm going to unsmash the button. You can always do that. Thanks to everybody jumping into the Specs chat. I see Jamari's in there. What up, Jamari? Good to see you. I see that Just Another Fragrance reviewer is out there. Good morning, Just Another Fragrance reviewer. Thanks to everybody who will participate in the show. We will take your super chat questions. And yes, this show is brought to you by the amazing people over at rogueshop.com. Yes, I'm talking about Richard. Yes, I'm talking about Shar. And yes, I'm talking about all of their amazing products, from the topicals to the oils, to the Delta 8 products, to the cartridges, to the supplies, to the vitamins, to the stuff you can get for your pets. And believe me, last night I really felt like I needed some stuff for both of my bigger dogs. They acted like crazy ass dogs, and I really could have used some pet product. We've got some somewhere. One of my dogs loves the little CBD stuff that you just put with a dropper in there. Anyway, she loves that stuff like it's addictive. She wants the whole damn bottle at once. Guys, we're going to be with you for the next hour, as I was saying. And Anwar and I had our heads in the same place yesterday. He wrote about Quinn Ewers. I wrote about Quinn Ewers. It makes sense that we would show up for the Overreaction Monday show with a little Quinn Ewers discussion. And fellas, a lot of it is centered around legacy, or at least that's what I wrote about last night. Anwar, you know that I at times am hesitant to give Quinn his flowers, that there's still steps I'm waiting for him to take. And yet there's kind of no getting around the fact that he's already a top 10 quarterback in the history of the program. Probably I've got him at like 6 or 5B, depending on, how you want to look at the all-time list. He's past Sam. He's past Chris Sims and Major Applewhite and a number of other guys. He's set up this season that if he can accomplish all of the things that are out there to be accomplished, he could be remembered as a guy who's one of the best to ever play at the University of Texas. He could, in theory, have his number retired, and yet it feels like it's a little premature to have all of that conversation, and yet it's real. It's not like we're making it up. If he's a co-Heisman favorite, he's got a top 5 team with real significant national goals and prospects and kind of expectations in front of him. So here we go. Can Quinn Ewers pass Colt McCoy as the number 2 quarterback in the history of the program?
He's set up to be the number 2 quarterback in the history of the program when it's all said and done. I saw your top 5 as I was recovering this morning from a busy weekend, and I was able to read your column. But he's set up, Catch, to be number 2 on the Mount Rushmore to Vince Young when it's all said and done. And I think he will surpass Colt when it's all said. I think for me, there's my overreaction. You want
That's
my
a
overreaction?
hot take.
My overreaction is that after this season,
this kind of heat, man.
After this season, Quinn Ewers will be the number 2 quarterback in the UT history. There's your overreaction Monday.
Woo!
How are you saying? But just based on what? I'm just curious. Like, what's the?
Well, there's a couple of factors. I think there's a couple of factors, but I'm going to give you the main fact. I'll give you 2 factors, and I'll give you the main fact in that. The first factor, obviously, is a belief in Steve Sarkisian and what he's been able to do from a quarterback development standpoint. And I kind of went through my history, and if you look at some of the guys that have been successful in the SEC, but when you look at the guys that Steve Sarkisian has coached, aka look at a Mac Jones, what he was able to do that final year at Alabama, knowing that you got a play caller like that who can devise and scheme everything, I think absolutely will help. So my belief in Steve, my belief in Quinn Ewers going into year 3 and what he's able to do with year 3 in the system. And then I'm going to go the route that Catch. I sort of read your column, but there's one missing component in here within everything that you wrote. Everything as relates to Colt McCoy. Catch, if I go back and I look at it, and I'm hoping my stuff is right as I looked at it, Colt McCoy played one SEC team during his time at Texas, and that was Arkansas in 2008. Quinn Ewers is going to have an entire SEC schedule, and I would argue that what Quinn faces this year from a day in and day out schedule will be totally different than anything Colt had faced day in and day out. And again, I'm not going to count the Alabama game where he got injured. Like, that's not fair. But I'm just talking about he played one game, 2008, 19-17 victory against Arkansas. Quinn Ewers is going to go against Michigan, the defending national champions. They're obviously going to play against Georgia. Then they've got the full SEC slate. If he has success in there, the way I believe he will have success, he ends up being number 2 because nobody else could say they face as tough of a schedule week in and week out as Quinn has.
Boy, Alex, I don't even know where to begin with all of that.
There's a lot. I mean, Quinn. I mean, Colt played where Colt played at Texas during the time that Colt played at Texas, and
the SEC wasn't the dominating.
It's just it wasn't quite this. Yeah, I don't know the best way. It just doesn't feel like it was quite the same back then with the SEC just being the complete halves versus the Big 12 just being this joke that it's become. I think to me
that kind of adds to what Quinn will be able to do this year. Yeah, I mean, it's like, comparing someone from the 1940s, right? Sometimes you got to say the modern day players are better. So that kind of
but in the 2000s, when Colt was a player in 2008.
I mean, Colt was still playing pro football like a year ago. I mean, it's not like
we're talking college. We're talking college.
I know, but what I'm saying is you invoke the 1950s and leather helmets and stuff. Like, we're not talking about. We're talking about a dude that.
Well, you brought up the era that he played in versus this era. I just use it as a comparison.
Dude, Anwar, we're not talking about completely different eras here. We're talking about eras just as far as little micro generations, right?
We're talking about an SEC dominant era that is better than what Colt has faced. Come on, if they faced show me the lie in Michigan, and Michigan not a defending national champion. Show me the lie. Is Georgia not one of the best programs in the country? Show me the lie. Is the SEC not considered the most dominant conference? I mean,
no, it is. But what I'm saying is to say that the 08, 09, 2000s. When did Colt play? 2006 through 2009. Yeah, 9. It just that Big 12 is just different than the one it is now, and I'm just like, to say the SEC is stronger now than the Big 12. I don't think you can. It's not that I don't think you simply can't say it's as big a difference between the Big 12 now to the SEC now to what the SEC now is to what the Big 12 was then. That's all I'm saying. The other thing is, to me, I think it bakes in a whole lot of. I mean, clearly, if Arch goes and I guess Anwar saying if Arch goes Quinn goes and wins every game this year and goes to win a national title and all the rest of that, then maybe we could talk about him alongside Colt. Is that the deal? Undefeated, wins a national title?
I think that. So I wrote about this last night, Alex. I think there are 3 I think when we talk about the best quarterbacks that have ever played at Texas, there are a top 3 tiers. Your top tier is Vince Young all by himself. Are we as a guy that's followed the program, Alex? You're cool with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, of course, yes.
The second tier, you've got Colt McCoy, Bobby Lane, and James Street. And McCoy, and you could argue that Colt and Bobby Lane are on their own tier because they do have their numbers retired and James Street doesn't. But James Street has a national championship, never lost a game. I feel like we talk about eras. That's a long era ago, but
that feels like a big difference. You know, what's James Street, 1968 or something? You said, was that what
yeah,
it was?
He was obviously the quarterback of the 1969 national championship team. And so I leave some wiggle room there in terms of what we do with James Street, but McCoy and Lane kind of on their own tier. You can, I think you would grandfather James Street into that. And then there's another group of players. It's James Brown, it's Sam Ellinger, it's Chris Sims, it's Major Applewhite, and it's Quinn Ewers. I think Ewers winning the Big 12 last year and getting his team to the playoff, that puts him ahead of Sam, with all due respect. That puts him ahead of guys like Sims and Applewhite, who were never able to accomplish either of those things and never got the Longhorns into a major bowl game during their times. I mean, we remember the
Did neither Sims or Applewhite ever win a Big 12?
No.
Wow. I can't believe that's something that I forgot.
There hasn't been many titles.
Yeah.
I mean, Max, James Brown won the first. Vince Young won the second. Colt McCoy won the third. And Quinn Ewers won the fourth. And we're talking about all these guys kind of in a group. I'm okay with the idea that Ewers and James Brown, I still put JB ahead of Quinn. He won the last Southwest Conference. He won the first Big 12. But they're close. To get to the level of Colt and Bobby Lane, like, Quinn's going to have to get his number retired. How does he do that? He has to be named a National Player of the Year. It doesn't have to be the Heisman. It can be the Maxwell Award. It can be any of the various cockamamie awards that recognize like the nation's best player. If he
Where's the Davey O'Brien Award? What or something?
That's the quarterback award.
Okay, yeah, something like this. Okay, yeah.
So he has to do more than that. It has to be a National Player of the Year award. It's not like the Doak Walker Award winner can get his number retired. Has to be the best overall player, or he can win a national championship and or both. But if he doesn't do either of those things, Alex, I would contend you're not climbing above Colt, because ultimately one guy can't have his number retired and then the other guy not be eligible for that and then think that they're on the same level. But it's out there for Quinn Ewers to take. He's a co-favorite with Carson Beck for the Heisman.
Does going to a national championship not mean, like, where does that fig?
Well, or he can do that. I mean, right? Colt was second for the Heisman and finished second in the country in 2009. So, that's the bar. That's the bar to get to Colt McCoy.
Because all the stats aren't as good. The stats aren't as good.
His stats are better than yours.
Colts.
Yes.
Yeah, like the completion. I don't have it pulled up. I know he's he's a more accurate quarterback. What was so his last 2 years, 76% completion percentage. His last year, 70.6, 68.2, 65.1 before that. What was Ewers even? So
Ewers
his
best, like 69 last year, if I'm not mistaken.
69 after being 58 the year before. So really good improvement. To Anwar's point, I feel like I think Anwar's right to bake in. Leveling up again this year. It's another year with Sark, right? It's like, it's a fair point. But it's like we're talking. Quinn Ewers is basically operated at his pinnacle last year at the same kind of. What did it look a little bit like? It looked a little bit like from a completion percentage standpoint and from a touchdown to interception standpoint. You got to, you can talk about the players that the Colt had around him, but then you can also talk about the fact that just last year, Quinn Ewers, he had one wide receiver going in the 6th round. He had a tight end going in the 3rd round. He had a wide receiver going in the 1st round, a wide receiver going in the 2nd round. It wasn't like he was without a great surrounding cast. He had a day 3 right tackle go off the board. He's got a left tackle that's going to go off the board super early next year. The team was really loaded around Quinn, so we can't necessarily say that Colt benefited from all these great players. From an overall statistical standpoint, I think think you probably it's just hard not to. It's hard not to have it be Colt unless you have Quinn just make an epic run this year.
That could happen. I mean, I think what's really interesting is that Anwar is essentially telling us he thinks that Quinn's going to win the Heisman, and I haven't heard Anwar do a season prediction yet, but it sounds like Anwar is picking the Longhorns to go pretty damn deep in the playoffs as well. If he's saying he thinks that Quinn is going to finish number 2 when it's all said and done. Real quick, Anwar, before you respond to that, Tom G says for a $10 super chat. What up, Tom? Good morning
Tom
to you
G.
as well.
Tom G.
We miss you, Tom. We feel your presence when it's both here and not here. Good to see you on a Monday morning. He thinks Quinn has to win the SEC title and get to the title game before he's number 2. That kind of segues into what I was just saying, Anwar, about you haven't said it yet, but if you have said that you think Quinn's going to be number 2, to do that, he's going to have some accomplishments this season.
Yeah, I mean, look, he definitely has to put more skins on the wall. I think the skins that he put on the wall this past year was obviously good, very impressive. You get to the college football playoffs, and you lose against a team that had Michael Penix, I think, as Alex says, hit God mode and really explode. I don't think Texas lost that game because of Quinn. I mean, I think we can all agree that they lost that game because of the defense and what was particularly happening in the secondary.
I kind of thought they lost the game because of Quinn. At least he has a little bit of – it was his worst game of the season, Anwar. We can't ignore –
Was it worse than the Wyoming game?
I mean, it was a 125 quarterback rating. We're splitting hairs if we're going to argue.
But you said worse. I would just say – I think it's clear for me, and we'll just disagree, that defense lost the game for them. Like, at the end of the day, they put up 30-plus points.
I think they share some responsibility.
But they put up 30-plus points, right? So I get that he didn't maybe have the Oklahoma performance or maybe the Alabama performance or so on and so forth. I'm not saying Quinn needs to win a Heisman because I think, again, operating in today's football, when we're talking about an expanded playoffs, this is where I push back on Tom G. When Tom G says you got to win an SEC championship, you just got to make the playoffs at this point. And your playoff success will ultimately determine that. And with an expanded playoff, you have the room to, if you lose in the SEC title game, you still have the opportunity to go far within the playoffs. So I wouldn't necessarily put that. I wouldn't necessarily say, I mean, great. It would be great if he was in New York. Now, Catch, I would definitely say if he would got a chance to be in New York, you've got the Carson Becks, you've got Shedeur Sanders. Like, those are guys he's competing against this upcoming season. So the competition for who the top quarterback in the nation is going to be pretty heavy. For me, it's about if he has 10-2 in the SEC in year 1, gets him to the SEC championship, maybe gets to the semis or, getting to the national championship would obviously be great. But obviously the road to getting there this year is going to be more difficult than it was in previous years. I'm more so projecting my belief that Texas will have success with Quinn for all the reasons that I was stating. To quantify it, but I feel like he needs to win this particular award. I don't necessarily I can do that at this moment, Catch. I'm just projecting that I believe he'll have way more success this year than he had in the previous year.
But you're talking about putting him at number 2 on the Mount Rushmore, right?
Correct, because based off of the level of competition that Quinn will play this year as compared to the level of competition that maybe Colt had played in previous years.
But without a Heisman or without with guaranteed Heisman, guaranteed national, we're talking just a 10-2 season. I just don't know how you can.
Two-time Heisman finalist who finished second for the award twice.
Yeah,
I think he'll be in New York. I can't say he has to win it, but I think he'll be in New York for sure. Yeah, that if we were in the business of going to Heisman Trophy things, I would tell Catch I would book my tickets today.
Okay. Well,
I think he's got to win the Heisman to go past Colt.
I think he's got it, or something. Like, it can't just be a 10-2 season where he loses in the first round of the playoffs, and goes to the Heisman ceremony.
I said get deep in the playoffs. I said to get deep.
I don't think the quarterfinals is enough. I mean, Colt played in a national championship game, and there will always be those, including myself, that believe that Texas wins that national championship game if Colt is able to stay on the field. I will say this, Anwar, the understated element of the Colt versus Quinn conversation. If both of them had redshirt seasons, right? So Colt wins a national championship ring sitting on the bench in 2005 as a redshirt freshman watching Vince. In 2006, he almost would have been if he doesn't get hurt against Kansas State, he probably ends up being a 3-time Heisman finalist because he was on his way as a redshirt freshman to getting an invite and then gets hurt and they lose their final 2 games of the regular season and things just kind of fell apart a little bit. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? But in 2007, if you look at their third-year sophomore seasons, Quinn was unquestionably, for my money, a better player than Colt McCoy was as a third-year sophomore. That was the year that Colt had 18 interceptions. Now, Texas wins 10 games because they win the bowl game. I think they go 9-3. They win their 10th. Late in the season, Jamal Charles explodes. They figure out the zone read. But Colt, I think Colt finishes with 22 touchdown passes, which would have been the same as Quinn, but one guy had 6 interceptions and the other had 18 interceptions and more than 20 turnovers overall. He was like just a turnover machine. So as they're going into their junior seasons, apples to apples, fourth-year junior versus fourth-year junior, fourth-year junior, I think Quinn is ahead of where Colt was at the same stage. The difference is Colt explodes in 2008 and has the single best passing season in the history of the program. Now, I don't think Colt was nearly as good in 2009 as he was in 2008. There's a lot of reasons for that. But, Alex, I think the thing that Quinn is chasing is that 2008 season. He's got to put up the best, right up there with Colt as like one of the best individual seasons in school history. He has to be at least a Heisman finalist, and he has to have this team knocking on the door of a national championship because that's what Colt McCoy did in 2008. And I think, their resumes are fairly similar up until now. And look, Quinn's not going to play a 5th-year senior season at Texas. So he has to do it all now. And Colt's always going to have the extra 4th season of play where he led the team to the national championship game and was a Heisman finalist again. That's like in his holster. That is all. It feels like a card that can, the trump card, right? He can whip that out on the table, and it'll be hard for Quinn to surpass unless he does it this season and kind of does it all, like the hat trick of accomplishments: conference title, compete for a national title, and at the very least, you've got to, I think, be the runner-up for the Heisman.
To overtake Colt?
Yes. Otherwise, he doesn't crack the top 4 or top 5.
I think there's a way he can crack onto the Mount Rushmore without but still not overtake Colt. I think that's something that can happen this year. But I think and here's the other thing about it, Catch. And somebody mentioned it in the chat. Like, it was what I was about to say. You forget that, dude. Colt scored 11 rushing touchdowns in 2008. He could run. He was he was such a weapon. He was it wasn't just the fact that he was breaking the passing records. He was lighting it up, man. It's hard. It's really hard to it's hard to think back and remember how awesome Colt was that year. And look, if Quinn goes and has a year like that, I think, you can probably, like Anwar says, SEC. No one's going to deny having to go to Michigan, having to face Georgia the first time here at home. Like that's a big deal, man. Like that's big time stuff, right? That's the stuff as we talked about on the podcast a few days ago. What's Quinn Ewers' legacy going to be, right? Like, what's that going to be? And it's going to be defined by this season because so much of his legacy is going to be like, dude, this is the quarterback that when Texas had their first year in the SEC and they transitioned into the SEC that first season, it was the toughest conference. It was the Lions Den, and Quinn Ewers came in and that's the story that you have to be told, right? That's what we're getting ready to chronicle. Coming here in about 3 months, man, we're about to start telling that story. We're gonna chronicle that whole story, but we don't know what's gonna happen yet, right? If it were to happen to where he comes in and does something and gains that, and Anwar, I'd be like, you come from a background of being a Hall of Fame voter where you journos get in there and you talk about, well, we have to apples to apples. If this guy got this award, then this other guy had to get this award to be able to be considered. And you have to reach this benchmark or this benchmark. I mean, to me, I just think it's wild to think that some coming from that kind of background that you wouldn't be the one saying like, well, he has to at least get to the national title game, or he at least has to be, you know what I mean? To be able to say that he gets above this dude. Am I crazy and think like, do you guys not think that whenever you have your Hall of Fame debates and stuff, or do you just not see this as a similar kind of concept?
There's different factors that go into certain things. You have guys who are first ballot guys who never won a Super Bowl ring. You have guys that, you know, are Super Bowl champs or been on Super Bowl teams that don't get in. You have guys who there's many factors. You have guys who get in as far as the senior committee 30 years after their times are done, right? So it's not every conversation as far as that, as far as the journalists, as opposed to the word journals that you use, would be able to. That's okay. We feel the same way about people to put together mock drafts, so it's all good. So is
journal a slur?
Yeah, I never knew
the way he uses it. It is.
Yeah.
So, but that being said, so there's a different thing, but you also have to compare eras. Like that's the thing that goes into it. You can the eras of and again 50s and 60s is going to be different than the eras of now. The eras of passing versus a lot of run stopping stuff. You have the era of like when Warren Sapp, right, and those guys who are my friends, those guys Brooks and this and that. Well, they play in the era where they didn't air the ball out the way that they aired the ball out. The guys ran through the holes, right? And now you got an era where you've got basically guys who are two down players, and you got enough something on the third down. So things change, eras change. That's I think that's the point. The point is looking at it objectively, and objectively, if you look at what Quinn will face this season, and you look at the top teams in this conference that we are considering, everyone considers to be the pinnacle of all conferences. If he can successfully navigate that, then yes, that's what it absolutely it just compared to certain things as relates to Colt. Now that being said,
quick, Anwar, I gotta defend the Big 12 a little bit here. In 2008. Colt played 5 top 11 teams, including 4 in a row, 4 consecutive weeks. He played number 1 Oklahoma and won by 10. He played number 11 Missouri and won by 25. He played number 7 Oklahoma State. They win that game. Then he goes on the road at number 5 Texas Tech, and they lose on the Crabtree play. But then he ends the season. They win the Fiesta Bowl against number 10 Ohio State.
Yeah, great game.
Sark and this team won't play 5 top 11 teams this year. They play 3 real badass games. Really,
so Michigan will be top 5, top 2, whatever.
Michigan's not going to be top 2.
Georgia will be probably number 1.
Yep.
Then who's the others? Probably,
and then they'll play Oklahoma, which maybe top 15-ish, maybe.
Yeah.
But like Colt played 5 teams ranked in the top 11 and won 4 of those games, including a 10-point win against number 1 Oklahoma, where he outduels Sam Bradford. I'm just saying, I get what you're saying about the SEC, and if they can do it this year, it'll be something on his resume that nobody else that's ever played at Texas, not even Vince, would have played against the SEC, and then maybe even gone through a 12-team playoff where you're going to have to win at least 3 games to win a championship, which has never been done before. But Colt, that 2008 team played some legit teams. They did. They really did. And the Big 12 was really good. I mean, they had 5 teams ranked in the top 10 that year. It was that year, the Big 12 was the SEC. Oklahoma played for the national championship game. Texas probably should have played in the national championship game. You had Missouri, Oklahoma State. It's the greatest Texas Tech team of all time. And then even the next year in 2009, which you had Kansas. Wait, when was it? It was 2007 when Kansas and Missouri were really good, and Todd Reesing and Chase Daniel. That was it's not what the SEC is today, but in 2008, it didn't get tougher than what Colt went through during that 4-game stretch in October. It's the thing he's mostly remembered for in his career, is that stretch of football where for a month it was almost as good as any Texas team we've ever seen play.
Yeah, I think thanks for pointing that out. But I think a couple of things will factor in. One, there'll be a recency bias of what Quinn does, because he will be the toast of the town if he's able to navigate that. But I will say this though, Catch, and to be objective as a journo, I will say this is that I do have concerns like that, and I won't sit here and say that I don't have concerns. I have concern about these wide receivers that Texas has, and I have concerns that does Texas have the guys that week in and week out we know for sure are going to check the box? Like they're hoping for that with an Isaiah Bond. Obviously, we hear a lot about a Ryan Wingo, hoping for that as relates to Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore, right? And hoping that the guys that the transfer guys, step up. But I do have some concerns about that. Gunnar Helm, I like him, so I'm not as worried about him as concerned. Feel good about the offensive line. Quinn has to do something that he has not been able to do by no fault of his own. He has to stay healthy for 12 straight games, and that has been a little bit problematic. And there's this reoccurring theme that I keep hearing Sark talk about when he starts talking about this team and needing some camaraderie and the leadership and wanting guys to like step up and become leaders and evolve into leaders. And that falls a little bit on the quarterback, he's got to be the guy that everyone's rallying around. And I would want to hear more of, Quinn is the guy. And I know, as opposed to, he's kind of this quietish. We're still trying to get him to kind of come out of his shell and talk. And this is like in year 3, we're still, at some point it is what it is, right? It just, you can try all you want to, but maybe a guy's just not communicating. So I won't sit here and be disingenuous and say I don't have any concerns about the upcoming season, because I do, but based on those 3 things.
What's interesting, Anwar, is that when you look at Quinn's season a year ago, there's a couple. So there are multiple truths at play. The first truth is, I think one of the things that I loved the most about Quinn last year was how steady he was. There were very few peaks and valleys, almost none, before he gets injured. And then when he comes back, he doesn't play his best football outside of that Big 12 championship game. But you look at the first 9 games of the season, and I think he was in the 150s or better in 7 of the 9s, which is incredibly consistent. He also, post-September, never had a game. He had 1 game in his final 9 games where he had a better than a 165 quarterback efficiency rating. It's just a stat. It's not the end all be all. I don't want to make it, but it's not subjective. It is the reason why I often go to those numbers is because we can give opinions on game performances. The data is the data. And when you look at the data, you can see in those last 3 games, a 125 against Washington, a 133 against Texas Tech. Again, he's coming off of the injury, although, I guess he was a couple of games in, but he was so steady early in the season. He's very good, very consistently. Like, that's what I really liked about what Quinn did a year ago. There was only one time last year, though, maybe two. I guess we could argue Alabama and Oklahoma State, where he was the best player on the field. And I think that's the next step that Quinn hasn't yet taken, which it's in front of him this year. I mean, boy, we can look back in 6 months from now at this conversation and laugh at like what a doofus I sound like, but he hasn't been a great player yet. And too often he's just not the best player on the field. And oftentimes I don't know that he's in the discussion. What I'd like to see from him this year, especially if we're going to start talking about him as like a Mount Rushmore quarterback at Texas, he does have to become like a dominant, ass-kicking alpha. Because the one thing that you would say about Vince, Colt, Bobby Lane, I never saw him play, but, the rep is the rep. James Street, the man never lost a game, won a national championship as a starter. And even James Brown, is that those guys were fearless. Those guys were alpha leaders. And there was a presence that they carried that almost like a macho, they were like manly men. They were throw a team on your shoulders and carry them and drag them to the finish line. That hasn't been what Quinn is. And I think you made that point, right? Like we're waiting to see that version of him, but it's going to take that. I think what's crazy, Alex, is we're talking about Colt and we're talking about Quinn potentially being able to challenge Colt for the number 2 spot. But there's a world where he has a very good season this year, but he doesn't win the Heisman. Maybe doesn't become a Heisman finalist. They make it to the playoffs, but ultimately lose in the round of 4, the round of 8 or something like that. And Quinn doesn't crack the top 5. So
what you just said about
monster season.
What, did you say that James Street never lost a football game?
Never.
I mean, how is he not number 2? Like, I mean, it's like that whole thing for number 2 is tough, right? Like
if someone wanted
to be able to crack number 2, not only being better than Cole, but being better than the guy that won the championships and never lost a football game.
Well, they haven't retired his number.
What?
They haven't retired his number, and so
they probably should. What did he wear?
16. It's got Arch's number.
Oh, Arch has his number. Oh gosh. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's just those are 2 tough guys to overcome, man. Unless you have I just feel like you got to have more skins on the wall than just navigating a great season, the first season in the SEC. I think you got to go win something, man. Go win something big, a Heisman, national championship, something like that. That's 2 pretty good resumes to be going up against.
I think the thing for me, Catch, is this becomes a little bit of, how much your faith level in Sarkisian and what he can do as a quarterback coach, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, one of the reasons, and there's many reasons why, Sarkisian got the job, but one of them has been, this is what he's done with quarterbacks in the past, right? He's had go back from the Carson Palmer days up to the Alabama days. It's all been about, hey, he's a developmental quarterback, man, and he can make your guys into elite and Heisman Trophy winners and all those kind of things. And then this really becomes year 3 of, okay, well, this is why you hired the guy. Like, this is what he's here for. Like, and can he pull that off? Because ultimately, I know AJ Milwee does have a say-so, and he's, he isn't technically the quarterback coach, but we know who's the offensive coordinator. We know who's, making sure these guys develop day in and day out as well. And so, you got to, this becomes a thing on Sark. Like, you have a guy year 3 who's so good, in your opinion, Catch, that he's doing something that you said you've never seen done, which is a 5-star quarterback having to wait to probably year 3 on campus.
It's never happened.
Yeah, year 3, right? So you said you've never seen this in the history of Rivals rankings, right?
Yeah, so, it's not that I haven't seen it. It's never happened.
So that's your faith. That's his faith level in Quinn, that he's doing something from a numbers standpoint we've never seen, which is a 5-star having to wait to year 3 in order to hit the field. So I think this aligns and marries, Sark into Quinn as well. Quinn's success is Sark's success and vice versa.
It's funny. I wanted to put this up there because it's a good point. The Dadvising agency, which I have questions, but I don't have time for them. It says 09 Colt wasn't the best player on the field every week. Colorado defense and special teams. Oklahoma almost choked the game away. Nebraska defense and Lawrence. Just the games I remember. Just for transparency, like Colt was the 3rd best player on the Texas team in 2009 at best. Earl Thomas was the best player on that team. And then Jordan Shipley was the best offensive player on that team. And all you need to know about how good Jordan Shipley was when Colt got hurt, Jordan still pistol whipped that Alabama secondary, which had the Thorpe Award winner covering him all night long. And he still went for, 10 for like $150 and 2 touchdowns or something like that. He was incredible. So it's a good point. But the Colt in 2008 was, he's the guy that's the guy that's the number 2 quarterback of all time. The 2009 version was something less than that for sure, but good pointing that out. The thing that we talk about last year and we talk about Colt at his very best, I think you're talking about wide receivers. Quinn obviously had a first round pick and a 2nd round pick and a 6th round pick and a tight end. Colt was throwing to arguably the best wide receiver in school history, although I've argued that Xavier would be number 3 for me. And then Quan Cosby. So a hell of a 1-2 punch. It's hard to leave the spring game, and this receiving core doesn't warrant being talked about in that breath yet. But onward for them to get there, for Quinn to have that kind of season, and for this team to have this kind of season, the wide receiver unit's got to take a big step up over the course of the next few months to at least be a team strength. They don't need to be the greatest receiving core of all time, but they got to be better than they were in the spring game and at times during the spring as a whole.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That was like number 1 of my 3 concerns was that wide receiver unit, and that's why I was like, there are ways it doesn't happen. And when Sark, I think what was it just recently? I think Alex wasn't it the interview that you watched when Sark talking about the wide receivers?
It's everything, Omar. We talk about it a lot. It's what he said at Touchdown Club when you saw him. It's what this is a theme, and the theme has always been this sort of nebulous. It's always saying like, Wingo looked great today, or I really like what I'm seeing out of Isaiah Bond. He's coming along, all this. But then there's always this weird backhanded thing where it's like, but we need more consistency out of the receivers. And then there was that national interview the other day on Moore where he just said, look, we need these guys to get some continuity. We need Quinn on the same page with these dudes. And your thought was, and I agreed with you, your thought was, that's just Sark telling Quinn through the media that he needs to get together with these dudes and be throwing the football, right now, right? Just like he needs to be getting together with them and throwing the football, because it just feels like, even though there's been practices during spring where he did highlight certain players, right? There's always been this kind of a little bit of an undercurrent of him saying, as far as the wide receiver room in general, it feels like there's a little bit of a ways for us to go there as far as, everything completely gelling.
To the point, he was concerned enough to go out and get 3 guys, outside the transfer portal. So clearly he had his concerns about it. And then, again, we've heard things in the spring and highlights, but, for him to still say like, that's going to be a key component. We got to get better, need a little bit more camaraderie in there. Those things stand as potential obstacles for Quinn to being on that like Mount Rushmore.
Here's a feather in Quinn's cap. And JR, this is a great point for $9.99 in the super chat. We do appreciate it, guys. Jump in to the Specs chat. Send us your super chats. I promise you go right to the front of the line. He says something to think about, but hard to factor in. And I'm not so sure it's hard to factor in. I think it's pretty easy to factor in. Colt began his career off of years of Texas on top. I mean, in his second game as a starter, it was number 1 Ohio State versus number 2 Texas. I guess so. Quinn had to go through a rebuild and a culture mess. Very difficult to pass Colt. Anwar, what I would say is if this thing gets razor tight, right? Let's say he finishes second in the Heisman, loses in a national championship game, and we're looking at their resumes side by side and saying they're pretty even, actually. They never quite got to the mountaintop, but they were in a couple of different ways as close as you could humanly get. One guy was piggybacking off of the Vince Young years, and another guy had to build it from scratch, essentially. And I think if it gets to be that close, I actually think that that's easy to factor in, and it's kind of an advantage that Quinn will have that Colt wouldn't have.
That's a tougher one for me, Catch. Even as I stand here as a Quinn guy, I don't know about that one. I get what JR is saying, right? I don't deny what JR is saying.
They were 5-7 the year before he took over as the starting quarterback.
Yeah. Culture mess. I don't know if it was a culture mess. I mean, it was a transition for sure. And there was some guys who, as every new coach comes in, you're gonna have some guys who buy in and some guys who don't, right? So I don't know. I guess the culture mess thing is where I kind of am like, I'm not quite sure of that. I mean, now, granted, we had the Joshua Moore thing happen, right? So I can't ignore that there were some people who were not on board, by the way.
I'm sorry.
You know, that whole thing makes me think of other things, but I'm not going to be petty on a Monday. I'm going to leave that whole thing gone. I'm going to let that go, Catch. I'm going to let the whole thing go. Boy, people said I was making things up and blowing things out of proportion. I'm just going to let those people live. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you could talk about building a program and getting something, and maybe that's what a guy gets remembered for. I guess to a certain degree. I guess maybe I don't know. I'll be curious what Alex thinks. I think that's fighting hard to give a guy a win for me.
To me, it's easy. I mean, I think it's weird. It's like Anwar and I've flip-flopped a little bit because I do think that kind of matters. The whole thing about the culture being bad. To me, it feels like that would be so let's catch. What was your thing that you pointed at? You said like if things get razor thin, what was it?
Yeah,
second in voting for the Heisman, big statistical year, knocks off a bunch of top 10 guys,
national runner-up,
like the exact same kind of thing, right? To me, then it becomes easy. At least then the Mount Rushmore becomes easy.
Yeah.
Because then it's Vince Young, it's James Street, it's Colt McCoy, and it's Quinn Ewers.
You're dropping Bobby Lane. NFL.
Oh, I don't know. Did Bobby Lane play in a leather helmet? I don't know. Like
close.
Okay. Like maybe I shouldn't be dropping Bobby Lane. I probably need to do some research on Bobby Lane before I say that for sure. But that was clearly long before my time. The thing about Street though, that's like the undefeated. That's just to me that should say something. I know it's super long ago, but yeah, that's kind of a coward's way of me saying I don't know how I would choose between Quinn and Colt if that exact same thing happened. If they become razor close like that, I was just like at that point, I think you do have to start taking things into consideration, like the schedule and how you compare that 08 schedule to the what Ewers will face in the 2024 season, and looking at catches analysis of that with going against the number 1 team, the number 15 team, the number 11 team, like all the it was a brutal schedule there too. So I mean that argument could be had, but that would be an argument to be had there at that point in time, right? You have the argument about like, well, he was in Heisman consideration, he didn't win the Heisman. Who did win the Heisman that year? Was it Tebow?
Tebow won it in 07 and Bradford won it in 08.
Okay, so I mean, other good quarterbacks he was going up against in the Heisman stuff. Gosh, I don't know. To me, the easy thing to say would be like, clearly Colt belongs on the Mount Rushmore. It feels like, and so if Quinn has that kind of year, even if you had trouble deciding, well, is he ahead of Colt as the number 2 or whatever, you could say, well, he at least belongs on the Mount Rushmore. I guess the whole Bobby Lane thing throws a wrench in that I'd have to go back and analyze. I don't have any Bobby Lane tape.
Mount Rushmore.
What?
I said, be a hell of a you'd have a real quarterback Mount Rushmore if NFL Hall of Famer Bobby Lane can't get on it.
Yeah, see, so he's an NFL Hall of Fame. Okay, I don't know. I'm out of the Bobby Lane analysis business. I'm gonna have to go look this dude up. Yeah, I just don't know.
Can I ask you guys a non-quarterback question for a second? Are there any other players on this team playing for legacies besides Quinn? We can't say Kelvin Banks he's not at that level yet. Where you're talking about him as one of the best offensive linemen or tackles in the history. I mean, he's not where Leonard Davis was. Maybe he's Mike Williams level, but you start going back into the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, and there's a number of college football Hall of Famers. Is Banks the only guy?
Well, I think there are guys that are playing for like team level legacy. Like it'd be an awesome legacy just for Texas to be able to have like the first running back taken in the draft 3 years in a row.
Yeah, I just mean individually though. Like, are there any other all-time great players? I think you could say Banks is at least in competition to be remembered on that kind of level.
From a positional standpoint, or like, are we talking left tackle? Like, for instance, for instance, my question to you, this odd, I had to defer on you. Jake Majors, one of the better centers that we've seen in Texas history when it's all said and done. Like, hasn't, and then I'm just thinking about positional. We're going positional.
All time, no. Modern history, yes. I don't think he's better than Russell Gaskamp was on the 1998 team where Ricky wins the Heisman. I mean, Russell Gaskamp wasn't a great player, but I think he's better than Jake Majors. But I think if we're talking about post-2000, David Snow, Chris Hall, I guess Lyle Sinline. But as good as Sinline was as a pro, I don't think he won a bunch of all-conference honors. Like, I literally was on Lyle Sinline's Wikipedia page this weekend, and I can't remember why.
That is a...
I know. I can't even explain to you why I was there, but I was looking at Lyle Sinline's Wikipedia page, and I don't think he was an all-conference player because he goes undrafted, and then he ends up starting in a Super Bowl. But, yeah, Sinline's the best, I guess. Sinline's the best since... God, I don't know.
How many, whenever I think of this, I just think about the best, young players on the team. And I think about probably Anthony Hill, best young player.
He's a year away from playing for his legacy.
What?
I think Anthony Hill's 1 year away from being a guy.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was exactly what I was going to say. It's like if he has another year where he's, was he second on the team in tackles last year? Had 5 sacks. I mean, just for a linebacker, if he has the kind of jump from year 1 to year 2, he'll be in line for all kinds of records and stuff for year 3. But as I'm just kind of looking at that's the I catch. I think it isn't like there's one guy. It's like if he gets 6 more sacks, he's going to be the all-time leader. 4 more interceptions, and next thing you know, he's the 3rd best in Texas history. I don't. Well, am I missing something?
The all-conference players from a year ago that return are Banks and Ewers. And that's it on offense. And then on defense, that's it. They don't have anybody.
Yeah, I think outside of I think it's Quinn, and maybe Majors modern day.
I think the Majors point's a good one, Anwar. I hadn't thought about it, but You know,
Yeah,
we start talking
because
about all-time great offensive linemen. He's nowhere near it. But we're talking about centers and centers only. If he could be first team all SEC this year, it'd be pretty hard in the modern era then to keep Jake Majors. He's
that
a
would
ways to
be
go before
just,
you do that. But
golly, if you'd have told Alex circa 2020 that Jake Majors was going to be an all SEC center for the Texas Longhorns in 2024,
I'm saying he has to do it.
It would have blown my mind. And I'll be like, wait, SEC? Like Texas? Jake Majors? It would have been too much to take in. I think I would have died. But the fact is, and Anwar and I talk about this a lot, Jake Majors has actually gotten good. So yeah. It used to be, you say, well, if this, if that's, like, no, there's no more ifs. Could he be a tiny bit stronger? Yeah. I mean, would you like it? Yeah. But dude, it's not anytime there's anything that happens there in the A gap as far as or what becomes of the A gap whenever they run inside zone, especially to the left. That's always Hayden Connor's issue. That's hardly ever a Jake Majors issue anymore. Whereas it used to be the Jake Majors issue. So he's corrected the one major leak that he had in his game, and he's actually gotten real good because he's so dang smart. You know, just a really good player. So yeah, I think that makes you think about the other guys. You know, you're talking about the Taylor Doyles and the Zach Shacklefords and stuff like that of the world. I mean, I would put him ahead of those guys. I have to. Did Casey Studdard play center or did he play guard?
No, he was a guard.
So Sinline was there with Studdard and them.
Yep.
I mean,
Sinline might be the most underrated player.
It's been a minute since like Sinline. So yeah, I mean, it could be the legacy of the kind of like the best of the new century kind of center. I think that's a good legacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 18 seasons.
Because the only question I have for you, and that I know we're winding down, is it a legacy year for Sark at all?
If he wins a championship of any variety, it becomes a legacy year. But I don't think, I don't think this is the season that's ultimately going to define him. I think the Arch Manning years are going to be the years that are on Sark's tombstone. Here lies Steve Sarkisian, coach of Arch Manning, fill in the blank. And I think that, but if he has a big year, it certainly goes a long way. I mean, right now, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but he's had one really good season as a coach. Whenever I had someone ask me this weekend, do I think he'll surpass Mac's legacy? And I was like, well, which would mean winning 2 national championships. And I was like, slow down. Come on. Yeah. Put some respect on Mac Brown's name where you're asking me if Sark's on the trajectory to surpass Mac. Maybe, but long way to go to get there.
Well, Catch, I'll just say this before you go. The one thing we've known around here, and I've seen happen multiple times, when a coach has had a good year and not followed it up with one, it usually doesn't go well. Ask Shaka Smart, ask Tom Herman, ask Rodney Terry. Like, when you have that lightning in the bottle year and the next year you come back and it's kind of a disappointment, it usually becomes the thing that becomes really hard to overcome.
As Eddie Murphy once said, what have you done for me lately? I'll tell you one thing that Specs has done for people lately. They deliver. On top of all of the things that Specs does, they deliver. Let Lisa tell you about it real quickly.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day.
Let me try this again.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
Can't say that one off without a hitch, but that's okay. We got it done. I do want to remind everybody, also check out Rogue Shop. They are the sponsor of the Overreaction Monday show. In honor of Rogue,
something going on? Oh.
I was just dedicating my Monday to Rogue. That's all. Guys, any other final thoughts?
Nah, I'm good.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens, man, with Quinn, man. Wasn't expecting to have the whole Quinn Colt talk today, but here we are. It was a good one. We just got to see what happens.
But I just want to tell Rex St. Charles when he said Shaka Smart never had a great year. He had a year good enough to get an extension. So some people in the building thought he had a good one. But outside of that, Catch, I know you'll have. Yeah,
I do not have it in me to do the Shaka Smart thing today on War.
I'm not defending him. I'm just saying they literally gave the man an extension after one season. Rex, I mean, it is what it is.
Tom an extension too. Everybody at Texas gets an extension with one good year. That's how it works on War. All right, look, guys, we'll be back at noon. Chad and I've got an idea of what we'll be talking about today. It'll probably center around 14 Big 12 championships that the Texas Athletic Department has won this season. They waited until the very end to flex some muscles as an athletic program, but boy, they flex the shit out of those muscles this season. We'll do that at noon. We've got the recruiting hour later on in the day. Do us a solid. Hit that thumbs up button. I was looking earlier. Not enough of you have done it. There's like 550 people watching live right now, and we have 41 likes. Come on now. On the way out the door, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you've done those things and have notifications, then you can go free with peace of mind. But not enough of you have hit the thumbs up button. Do it for us. We do appreciate it. For myself, for Anwar, for Alex, for the amazing people at Rogue Shop, call Richard or Shar today and let them make your week.